Have you ever wondered about the connection between mental illnesses like schizophrenia and spiritual influences? Let's try to understand this with an analogy. Imagine a car. It needs fuel to run, right? Now think about putting a powerful additive into that fuel, one that's way too strong for the engine. Like putting Formula One racing fuel into the engine of an old, beat-up van. Even with a skilled driver, controlling that van with a supercharged engine would be nearly impossible. Now, add another layer. While this driver is struggling with the overpowered van, he's also being distracted by screaming kids, people arguing, and worries about paying bills. What's likely to happen? He might just crash into the first pole he sees, especially if he's not a great driver to begin with. This is a great way to think about what happens in the brain during schizophrenia. There's an excess of dopamine, a neurotransmitter that our brain needs to function correctly. This excess dopamine is like that racing fuel in the old van's engine. The brain's functioning becomes just as impaired as the driver's ability to control his vehicle. So where do spiritual influences fit in? In these cases where the driver, the person, can't control their own engine, their brain, other spirits might gather around. They could be drawn by a past connection, a desire for revenge, or just plain mischief. Or maybe they're just lost souls without a better purpose. They start to surround the driver, influencing and distracting them far more than they could if the engine were running smoothly. And this isn't just limited to schizophrenia. Any disorder that alters the levels of neurotransmitters and affects brain function can make a person more susceptible to these spiritual disturbances. We could say that any condition where a hormonal or chemical imbalance compromises your control over your brain also weakens your defenses against these external influences. This can also happen with personality disorders, physical illnesses, or even through our own natural psychic abilities, which we all have to varying degrees. Let's simplify it even more. Imagine you own a unique car, built just for you. Only you have the key and only you know how to drive it perfectly. One day you're on a trip and the car starts acting up. You hit the brake, but it accelerates. You turn the wheel left and the car veers right. You shift into first gear and it starts going in reverse. What would you do? You'd probably pull over, try to figure out what's wrong, and if you couldn't fix it, you'd call a mechanic or a tow truck. You're the driver, not the mechanic. What if, in trying to fix it yourself, you made things worse? Or what if you called a shoddy mechanic who used the wrong oil or the wrong parts? The car would end up in a much worse state. Now imagine you have an urgent, can't-miss appointment. You can't wait for a professional. You'd have to lock the car, leave it, and find another way to get to your appointment. By foot, taxi, whatever it takes. But in your rush, you forget to lock the doors. What happens to your car, left abandoned on the side of the road? Strangers might find it and try to take it over. But remember, this car is unique to you and it's already broken. The chances are high that these intruders won't be able to get it working either. They'll tinker here and there, and in the end the car will be even more damaged, with much bigger problems than it had initially. Let's look at this from another angle. You abandon your car, not because it's mechanically broken, but because you're in no condition to drive it. Maybe you've had too much to drink or you're so distracted you can't focus. Again, people find the car and try to make it work. In the first scenario, with the mechanical problem, the car will only run again once it's fixed. In this second scenario, it will only run when you, the driver, are fit to drive again. Now, imagine that in either case, the car is left abandoned for a long time, and many people have tried to hotwire it or force it to run. When you finally return, either after the car is repaired or after you've recovered, you'll find it incredibly difficult to drive your own car again. It has been tampered with so much that it will take a long time for you to regain full control. Think about what happens if the car is just left there completely abandoned and no one pays any attention to it. It will rust and rot away, like old trains on an abandoned railway. But what if someone, a squatter you could say, decided to look after those abandoned machines? What if they kept them sheltered and maintained, waiting for the owners to return or for someone to buy them? They would be preserved, still valuable. In that case, we should be thankful to these squatters, right? They're the ones who stop the machines from turning to junk. Driving them away before the rightful owner is ready to take over would mean losing the machine for good. Now let's bring this back to the brain. In schizophrenia, The excess dopamine affects the frontal lobes, the part of our brain responsible for analysis, planning, and judgment. The person can't perform these functions properly. This imbalance also causes delusions and hallucinations, similar to what someone on certain drugs might experience. They start to see, hear, and feel things that aren't real, living in a different reality. Under these conditions, the person with schizophrenia can't drive their own body as they need to. The more they try to regain control of their thoughts, the more difficult it becomes. So if the owner abandons the car, do these squatters or spirits just take over the body? Not exactly. A spirit can't completely abandon its body without the body dying. So, most of these spirits, often called attachments or obsessors, are more like curious onlookers. They see this vehicle that isn't being properly controlled and try to make it work, often with good intentions but no real knowledge of how to operate it. Their meddling, even if well-meaning, can cause more harm and make it that much harder for the person to regain control of their own mind and body once the underlying chemical imbalance is treated. It's a complex interplay between the biological condition of the brain and the spiritual environment surrounding the individual. Understanding both sides is key to a more complete approach to healing. Thanks for watching.